Teen Girl from Mars by Jason Goldtrap. Chapter 1, Welcome to Eagle Creek. Welcome, Voyager. Traveling through the black void of space, one is awestruck by the sight of that big blue marble called Earth. From a distance, it looks the same as it always has. There are mighty oceans, majestic mountains, thunderous storms which bring refreshment to the dry plains, along with deserts and other familiar environs. The planet does not bear the scars of nuclear war. Aliens have not conquered or even been discovered yet. Robots have not become self-aware. From this vantage point, it appears unchanged. However, a closer examination reveals it to be a world divided. The United States of America, a nation built upon great ideals, a movement of free men who conquered the wilderness and invented practically all of the technology which blesses us to this day, that great governmental structure which promised the loosing of chains, that mother of exile whose skirt of protection spanned from Fort Kent, Maine to San Diego, California, whose tassels mingled among the snow in Point Barrow, Alaska, and the white sand beaches of Hawaii, that land of heroes who proved in liberating strife that their country was to be cherished more than life, that United States of America is reduced to 5 western states: Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, and North Dakota. Here in this country, a remnant held fast to the principles of individualism, capitalism, and free expression, watched over by a benevolent Father of Lights. The other states and territories, since 2052, have been a part of a vast amalgamation called the North American Union. Following a brief war, a conflict rightfully separate from the corrupt, inept, and pagan NAU, the United States of America, having secured their independence, set about the conquest of space. Recognizing that its best opportunities lay off-world, the robust and dedicated American space colonists landed on the red dust of Mars on May 15, 2057. After several weeks of exploration, 8 of the 24 men chose to stake their claim on the strange new world and not return to the Rutledge lunar base. Under the leadership of Commander Henry Dolan, they became the first Martian Americans. As the days and weeks and years passed, hundreds and then thousands and then millions of other Americans came and settled, wanting to secure a life free from the myriad of threats they faced on Earth. And so our story begins high above the crimson orb of Mars. Even from a distance, Mars seems like a very busy place. Innumerable ships dart in every direction. Moving closer, dropping through the wispy fringe of an unbreathable atmosphere, one can see sharp, barren mountains, uninviting rocky wastelands, and sullen, shadowy, deep craters. However, just coming into focus, one can also make out the hallmarks of civilization: massive, dust-covered mounds. Miles in diameter, they bundle in teardrop patterns. Flying north, we see 3 mounds in a dumbbell pattern. Skimming the surface, just to the east of the middle mound towards its northern neighbor, 100 feet above the surface, we see a bright yellow light pierce the smoldering gloom. The unsettled air belches its disturbance, hinting that it conflicts with the unpressurized Martian atmosphere. An arrow-shaped spacecraft moves into position. A soft purple glow from its sleek underbody grants it the ability to hang motionless for a few seconds before it slowly moves inside an enormous white chamber. We join its entry and turn around to watch the 2 steel doors close, separating us from the untamed hostile atmosphere so that we may transition to the civilized domain of air. Slowly, surely, the dust settles and the air becomes still. Soon the lofty entry doors open. We are about to enter Sheridan Valley, a domed city, 25 miles long and 12 miles wide, in the Martian Republic of North Jefferson. The date is Monday, April the 4th, 2191. For 125 years, Martian Americans have lived in dome cities. The first explorers and pilgrims lived in box-like surface stations. Exposed to the whims of the chaotic Martian atmosphere, those pioneers began exploiting and converting the available resources to construct webs of steel and glass over impact craters. Martian Americans could now homestead in an oxygen-rich, pressurized environment, a permanent garden, a happy land illuminated by an artificial sun. Though only a mile in diameter, these first primitive domed cities soon became the safe abodes of 30,000 residents. Still relying heavily on food from Earth, the newly constituted Martian American Republic studied the possibility of building domes whose primary purpose was not housing but agriculture. Within a few years, most Martian Americans ate food grown exclusively on their own land. Soon they would be shipping food back to Earth to sell to the poorer nations, as well as shipping food to the American colonies in the asteroid belt and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Desiring to avoid the mistakes of decades earlier, when the original United States of America fell apart amid intolerable debt, moral depravity, and corruption, a new quasi-religious movement began in the late 21st century among the Martian Americans. It was generally believed that the constant distractions of high technology had significantly contributed to the feelings of disconnection which led to the dissolution of the Union. To ensure this did not happen again, daily exposure to such technology, especially among the youngest citizens, was advisable. Not wanting to entirely forego the advances in medicine and other scientific fields, it was decided that professionals would retain easy access to the more advanced computer-based systems. Looking back through the annals of time, it was concluded that the Edwardian era, roughly 1901 to 1914, would be a good era to mimic in terms of lifestyle. The Edwardian era was a time of radical technological transition. Within a few years, the majority of Americans were introduced to technologies which would come to define life in the 20th century. Electricity, running water, recorded sound, telephones, and automobiles became staples of modern life within a decade. Yet, even through this technological upheaval, the American lifestyle remained focused on the home. Two-parent families were the norm. Children were raised to be responsible adults. Most business was conducted via handshake instead of contracts. In 2101, Newcastle, the first Edwardian dome city, opened. Instead of super tall towers, citizens of Newcastle lived in small two-story farmhouses. They raised their own crops and quickly formed a tight-knit, cohesive society. Children in Newcastle were not exposed to high technology until the age of 16. Until then, they read from paper-bound books, wrote with pens and pencils, listened to classical music on phonograph records. Sheridan Valley is an Edwardian zone. Let's go inside. Flying past the dome's entry doors, we arrive in a white, hazy region, the top of the dome. Looking down, we see a dozen lane of flying machines sprinting through the upper reaches of the dome on their way to and from the other modern dome cities on the north and south end of Sheridan Valley, the dome city of Salminio to the north and the dome city of Truman to the south. Dropping through the lanes of traffic, a feat of flying achieved by a computer, such aerial dynamics are far too complex for most humans, the amber-tinted valley comes into view. On the north end of Sheridan Valley rests the red brick metropolis of River City. Unlike Salminio, with its round, bulging skyscrapers hundreds of stories tall, the tallest building in River City is the Excelsior Hotel, at only 7 stories. The cobblestone streets are filled with pedestrians, horse-drawn carriages, and electric motor cars, which resemble those found in the American cities of the early 20th century. This deliberately moderate pacing of lifestyle is made more purposeful via the subdued technology. With a population of 20,000, the most striking feature of River City is the Sheridan River, which begins as a waterfall tumbling down the cliff wall originating in Salminio. From its humble bubbling in River City, it becomes a thunderous rapids on the south end of town before going underground and becoming the water supply for the nearby dome city of Truman. Eagle Creek oscillates south, bubbling among the endless wheat fields from which comes Sheridan Mills bread, noted throughout the solar system for its wholesomeness. A little west of the river is Darling Knob, a granite outcrop rising 200 feet above the surrounding fields, topped by a plateau. Darling Knob is a popular spot for picnics, affording a view of the entire valley from River City to its 2 smaller cousins, the towns of Quincy and Eagle Creek. The valley holds one more small town. High on the western cliff wall is the hamlet of Cornersville, home of the Sheridan Valley Weather Bureau, which regulates the atmospheric conditions in the valley to permit a favorable agricultural climate, and the Adaptation Village, which provides potential newcomers who want to move from the modern world to the Edwardian-themed valley a means to become accustomed to its slower pace. Atop Darling Knob, 2 couples in their 20s on a double date are enjoying a picnic, basking in the warm glow of a holographically projected sun on the ceiling dome. They are not dressed in modern clothes. Their attire resembles outfits one might see in the early 20th century. The women wear long dresses, modest and practical. The men wear brown trousers, white shirts, whose sleeves cover their arms down to their wrists. In this case, however, the sleeves have been unbuttoned so the men can toss around a football.